Welcome to Construction Champions Podcast, where we are burning the house down and rebuilding it twice a week. I'm your host, Rod Nussbaum, and I am here to help you become the champion that you're meant to be. Along with our amazing guests along the way, we will provide you with the resources, the latest and greatest. You will sit down with disruptors in the construction industry. And my goal from day one has always been to change the mindset around the construction industry. No more where we let the 3% of bad apes dictate the entire reputation of. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Construction Champions Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Nussbaum. I am the founder and CEO of BuilderComs, and I am the person that is going to take you on a journey today into your business, your construction business, any kind of business you have. My goal as the host is to bring on amazing guests, which is all we do on here. You never have to worry about listening to me ramble, except for here at the beginning, but I have to say something other than here is our guest. So if you could, wherever you're listening at, whether it's YouTube, the many podcast platforms we're on, and Reese Across America Radio, I want to welcome you here and thank you for taking the time. And we're going to dive right into it like we always do. Christene, it is fantastic to have you here today.
Ron, thank you for having me. I am so excited about this. We were chatting just before we started, and we both have quite a fondness for just getting to know each other live. And so I barely know you, you barely know me, and we're about to have an amazing conversation, and I can't wait.
Absolutely. So why don't we get started with that? And why don't you introduce yourself to me and all the construction champions out there listening?
Wonderful. Well, my name is Christene Marie. I am the fourth generation of a family-owned painting business started in 1922 in Baltimore, Maryland. And that has just, I've been the daughter and the watcher of my dad really building out what was started by his grandfather. And then I joined as partner back a couple years ago with my brother and have worn different hats and played different roles in the business. I also started my own company 6 years ago this summer, specifically focused on branding and marketing. And it's been really fun to bring that into the family business. And then also have started another business, Foundation First, which is marketing specifically for foundation repair companies. And not just foundation repair, but just trades in general. And Ron, the reason why this is so important to me is because I've had so many conversations with my dad where it was like, well, I don't know who in the family is going to take the business over. Maybe we'll just shut it down. Or I've also talked with other business owners where they're like, well, we don't really know what our plan's going to be. I guess we'll sell the business. And then private equity comes in and just completely destroys with the culture. And so I care so much about the legacy of what people have worked so hard to build. And, you've got Freedom Runs Deep right behind you. And there's something about preserving the hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears of Americans that I just get so fired up about because people that's their life. My dad, the business is his legacy. And I talked with my brothers. I'm one of 6 kids. And so, the boys weren't that interested. And so I've told my dad, like, hey, I'm your girl. I'll take it over. So I really care about legacy and really preserving the brand, whether that's the brand on an individual level where it is that mom and pop shop and they want to keep it small, or brand on a large scale where they do want to grow and they do want to expand, but keep the integrity of who they are.
I love it. And I love that you look at it from that perspective, especially that you have been around it your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited. I am excited to ask the $1 million question, and that is, what makes a construction champion?
Man, what makes a construction champion? I will use my dad as my avatar because 1, I respect him so much. And 2, my dad, actually, I was just speaking with him about this over the 4th of July weekend. We were talking about how he led by example rather than leading just by words. And he really believed that concept of let me live my life in such a way that it speaks for itself rather than just me espousing words and my values and things like that. But he really lived by example. And so effectively what I have found, what makes a construction champion is someone who knows who they are. they knows their values, and then they live accordingly, because that is the ultimate best form of leadership that transcends down. It is the thing that sets not only the example, but it sets the tempo and temperament of the way that the culture interacts with their customers. And then it allows for it to be long lasting, because I've seen what happens when private equity comes in. I know I just mentioned this earlier, but I've seen private equity just destroy companies, and not just construction firms, but also, a friend of mine had a Google Ads business, and private equity bought it, and it just was like destroyed from the inside out. And so much of our construction businesses are weather dependent. There's a lot. One of the companies we were working with, it was a drought. And so that was really, really hard, because it depended so much actually on rain for waterproofing. And so what we found was, like, we need to have multiple services that aren't weather dependent. But what we also need is to have a really strong nucleus that can withstand when it is hard and when we are having a slower season, where people may have delays in timelines and in their own work and schedule. The trust from the customer comes from the trust of the employees in the leadership. And so it really just translates out. So the healthier we are internally, the healthier our external relationships are going to be. So to summarize, I really believe that a construction champion begins first and foremost with you and me.
I love it. And being somebody that has a lot of experience in the industry that you're talking about, weather has nothing to do with it if you build the company the right way.
Yes. Yes.
100%. So,
Yeah. It's
how,
so true.
yeah,
And can I ask you a question?
yeah, go ahead.
Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah.
So typically, so many people do like to blame the weather. And so, what have you found that has allowed for you to build it the right way, so that you're not dependent on external factors and you can have more predictable years?
Expectation and mindset. It's all a mindset thing. If you think about it from the perspective is that weather dictates everything, weather will dictate everything. If you just look at it as it's a variable, it's something we can't control, so it's going to be there. We can start to understand what the patterns are with weather and plan accordingly, but you can't let it run your mindset of, oh, well, weather dictates our entire business. Then employees will. So it's a mindset shift within an organization, starting with the leadership, is that it's not easy. Leadership gets bought in, but to get everybody bought in that it's not going to matter, like, people have the problems no matter what's going on. And if you're very customer focused, especially when you're talking, let's talk waterproofing.
Yeah.
When the water is coming in, it's when it's the most critical time. That customer is the most urgent to buy. Just because it's not raining doesn't mean they still don't have that problem. It's just not hitting them in the face. So you have to be able to bring those emotions in the sales process, have them understand, do you want to have this happen again? I know it's not currently happening. When it's not currently happening, it's the best time to fix it. Not when you got 6 inches of water in your basement. So it's starting to change the mindset about how we look at this, and not look at it as an urgency thing, other than it's a pure need. Like, these people have these problems and they need to be solved. And the best time for us to actually solve them is when they're not having them. But it becomes the hardest time to sell at that point, because
Yes.
people aren't feeling the pain at that time.
Not feeling the pain. Well, and
Hopefully
Ron,
that was a good answer.
yeah, well, honestly, what you just said is, I feel like, the most perfect example of why leadership, it really does start at the top. You're informing everyone's mindset. You're informing the salesman's mindsets. You're informing the operations team. Everything begins with you. And that's where it really is. Let's look in the mirror. Our businesses are a great mirror to reflect how we're doing, because most often our businesses, our problems are not isolated to the business. They probably are coming into our home front as well. Let's be honest. That if we're having issues and it's stemming from us and we're not looking in the mirror, it's probably permeating throughout multiple areas of our life. And so, to your point, man, you have all of the power. You really, really do. And so what you just said was incredibly potent because of that very thing of most most foundation repair businesses will blame the weather. And that's not taking the responsibility that you just offered to, hey, I actually have a lot more autonomy and agency over our business, and it really starts with me. And you've led from within in a really strong way. And I just what you just said is exactly the point of, hey y'all, it's time that we look in the mirror. What are our values? And are our values the thing dictating the business, or are we blaming external factors like the weather, like AI, like our competitors, or are we really strong and secure in who we are to then pave the path forward?
I mean, it's like you listened to the show before. I use the look in the mirror. That's why I tell people all the time is
Oh, I haven't heard you say
it
that. I
starts
love
with
it.
a conversation between you and the mirror.
Yes.
Like that is where every kind of
Wow.
starts. If you can't have that conversation, you can't have it with anybody else. Like you have to be able to fix it with yourself first.
Ron, that's so good. And it honestly, it's something that not a lot of people talk about, much less do, because it's really uncomfortable. It's so much easier to point the finger and ignore the four pointing back at you. And so to your point of, okay, looking in the mirror, it's such a core basic question, but a lot of times we don't actually do the work to answer this. What are our core values on a personal level, beyond the business level, but because personally they're the ones, if we're really going to be looking in our mirror at our reflection, not the business's reflection, but ours, we have to really assess, have I done the work to really clearly outline the values that drive my every single day? When I turned 30, I wrote my eulogy. And this was just such a good exercise to be like, okay, who do I want to be at the end of my life? And does my every single day put me closer to that ideal? And Ron, I was forced to change my behaviors and or change my beliefs because I was saying and claiming to want something that I wasn't living in accordance with. So I need to change something if I'm going to be honest. And so that was a really, really good exercise. So I know that you love, giving people tangible actions at the end of this. I know that we're not towards the end yet, but that exercise has been incredibly powerful for me because now I actually have rewritten my eulogy to be in first person present tense, where it's, I am this kind of a leader. I am, and I'm not married yet, but I have that in there because I want to train my subconscious brain to already be preconditioned to be the kind of wife and mother that I know that I want to be at the end of my life. And so there's something really powerful about taking ownership, knowing what we want, knowing what our values are, and then adapting and like kind of almost like in this beautiful mixing pot of like, oh man, what Ron just said, I'm going to add that to my values. That was so solid. That was so good. And it's about rewiring our mindset to your point. So, man, I love that.
I love it too. This is a fantastic conversation. But I just have a whatever question that's just in my head that won't go away.
Okay, let's go.
Because you have a marketing background.
Yes.
Like that is, and we talk about all this mindset and everything around that and being the leader. Why why do some people like there's no middle ground in the construction industry? Like you either suck at marketing and branding or you have it on point.
It's really true.
Why is it such a vast difference? You don't really see people in the middle of the road, like
Yes.
that are trying to figure it out, but have it. Like and that to me has to be a mindset thing that because it's so vastly different.
Mm-hmm. It is so true. There's not a lot of gray with this with trades in general, whether it's B2B or B2C, just trades in general. It's kind of one or the other. And man, my dad didn't have, my family business did not have a website for 94 of their years in existence.
Well, you'd have to take out when internet didn't exist.
True. There you go. All right, so we didn't have a digital presence for about 20 years. But truly, Ron, there is I'll go back to values once again. I think that there's multiple reasons. So I'll go through what the top three that really come to mind. And one is value. I think if people do not place a value on brand and understand the power of it, I think that they're not going to invest in it. Show me your calendar and I'll show you what you prioritize. Show me your bank account and I'll show you what you prioritize. And so if we're not blocking off time or spending money, clearly there's not a value there. And so with that, I think that when I consider a construction champion, it's someone who does understand the value that they bring to the table. And thus that requires an awareness and kind of a conscious agreement that brand is important. I am important. My brand is important. And what I mean by brand, when I say brand, essentially this definition was conjured by me and the company I used to work with before I started mine. I love it. It's so, so, so good. They say it is the expectation for an emotional experience. You said emotions earlier. It's the expectation for an emotional experience that then we surpass with surprise and delight. So every single one of our customers has an anticipated expectation for an experience that they're going to have with us based on what we tell them. So essentially, I expect that I'm going to have my basement fixed. I'm expecting that it's not going to be messy. You're not going to tread mud through my house. You're going to do it on time. It's going to be probably a better deal than all of the competitors. And the powerful thing is that the brand, depending on the strength of it, can really shine in terms of setting what the emotional transformation is going to be, because people buy on emotions. Harvard found that 95% of our business decisions take place in our subconscious, which is where our emotions live. So customers will have their list of logical reasons why they're going with you. But at the end of the day, they felt an emotional connection, either with the salesman, either because the salesman's wife was expecting a baby. And, they're like, oh, I want to let Jerry win the job because of his wife. Or maybe it's, a lot of businesses in the trades will say, hey, we actually have a faith component to our business. Like they actually, or freedom, faith or freedom, something that's really grassroots that people really feel emotionally compelled with. So we have our logical list of why we work with a business, but it's really the emotional resonance that moves the needle for me to buy with you. And so the stronger the brand in knowing who they are, knowing their values, and the more they also know the customer on an emotional level. What is the customer really looking for? Are they looking for actually peace of mind? Are they looking for security? Are they looking for the alleviation of fear around the greatest investment, which is their house? So there's multiple reasons in terms of, what constitutes a strong brand that then we as the brand can tap on when engaging with the customer. But I think one of the main reasons why people are not investing in marketing and branding is because they don't understand the value of it. But yeah.
I need to jump in here because I'm going to say something that's going to piss a lot of people off. I had this realization when you kind of said it, but we just figured out why there's such a vast gap in the branding, and it's not having the value in believing in value in branding and marketing. They don't value themselves enough to say I am going, like they don't believe they can have that company. Because I was working through this in my head, and you see the guys that are killing it at this, they're killing it at life too. Like they're put together, they're rocking and rolling, like they understand the value, like they believe in their companies, so they're going to put this out there because they know the value their companies deliver. Look at the people that don't have,
Yeah.
and they're not put together. They're not, they don't value what they actually do. And like that, it gives me chills because
Yeah.
I've talking about this so many times. And when you said the value thing, it just all of a sudden clicked in my head.
Wow.
It's not that they don't value branding. They don't value their self and their service enough to be able to say, we need to make this into something people believe in, because they don't believe enough in themselves.
Ron, what you just said, that is gold, and that is precisely why. So I'll get personal here for a second. So I started my business in 2019, and 3 months after I started my business, my former husband, who I'd been married to for about 6 years at the time, I got married when I was 20, and he said, I'm not sure if I want to stay married anymore. And then 2 years later, he left, and it just destroyed me. And what that did for me was it forced me to go inward. And so I could either blame him and have those fingers pointing back at me, or I could look in the mirror and do the work. And to your point of we don't value ourselves, I had lived my entire life looking to everyone external, horizontal. I liken it to a compass. When we're pointed north, we're aligned with who we are. We're in our brand, because each one of us has a proprietary brand, not just on the business level, but for who we are. Each one of us should have values. Each one of us has a mission and a purpose for why we're here. But if our compass is broken and magnetized east or west, we're never going to be able to fulfill on the fullest potential and potency of that mission for our individual lives, much less so for our business. But to your point, man, you just said it so brilliantly. We lack an understanding of our inherent worth and value that shows up in the way that we operate our business.
So how do we get the guys and ladies listening that have not invested in this, that are not, they're doing themselves a disservice, because a brand and the marketing behind what you're doing is that's how the weather stuff we talked about, like that's how you start to take that over, because
Yeah.
people know who they are. You're who they call. How do
Yes.
I get them to look in the mirror, have this conversation, and realize like what they're doing matters? They're
Mm.
they're already doing it. That
Yes.
build that confidence to then put the best foot forward. I think a lot of times they're like, well, if it's not the best, whatever, then expectations are low. I don't really have to worry about it.
Well, and isn't that the truth? There's actually kind of a safety net in not saying that you're great because we always have an excuse. There's a safety net in looking to everyone to tell us who we are because we're not having to take responsibility for actually standing up straight, squaring our shoulders and saying, no, I believe that I can deliver value because I am valuable. This service is valuable. Well, now we have a higher standard. And it's actually easier to set a lower bar because then the expectations aren't so high and we don't have as far to fall. So it really is, there's a fear factor too with what keeps us small and keeps us in our box. So to your point of how do we start? I mean, honestly, I this is the way I really advise different brands, but ultimately I've done the work myself. So this is what I've done. And then ultimately it's up to other people to do it for themselves. I have what I call the knowing framework, which is 3 questions that force us to your point about mindset, right? It's a mindset in our business and the mindset towards ourselves. So what we have to do is bring our mindsets into the limelight. It's basically bringing the subconscious narratives, subconscious beliefs that run our lives. We need to bring that we basically need to lay it on the table. So we need to bring our subconscious into consciousness. And in this, there's 3 questions that I ask on a very frequent basis. And it is first, who was I? And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Who was I? What happened in the past? What are those core memories in childhood that shaped the mindset in how I show up today, which is the second question, who am I? I can't answer the question of, well, what are my existing mindsets if I don't trace the root of them into the past? We will never understand the present until we understand the past. And so what I do is I identify kind of those core memories that I feel even sometimes embarrassed about. It's like, why is that a big deal? It's not that big of a deal. Those are precisely the moments. And think of them almost as like little T traumas. They're nothing big, obviously that war veteran deserves the trauma that he feels, but all of those little repeated memories and experiences that are like locked in our bodies. Each one of those are what I call a little T trauma that just solidified a narrative about the world or about ourselves. And so what we need to do is pull those little T moments into the limelight. So an example of this is when I was 3 years old, I had Lyme's disease and I didn't know, but I had a really swollen knee and I just kept crying and crying. And I was actually staying with, no, it wasn't with my parents, but I was staying with another caretaker at the time when my parents were on their anniversary trip. And every time I was crying, she was spanking me. just because she thought I was being disobedient, and spanking was in alignment with our Christian conservative household belief system. And so what I learned, though, what my 3-year-old little body stored as a memory was that if I have negative emotions, I will experience physical pain and disconnection from those I love. Y'all, that is a big deal. That is a big fundamental narrative that shapes the way that I show up every single day with my partner, with my parents, with my colleagues, with my peers. Every single relationship is defined by this seemingly small moment when I was 3 years old. And so until I pull that into my consciousness and I'm like, oh, wow, look at that. And then the third question, so who was I? Who am I? How does that mindset manifest today? And then third, well, who do I want to be? What is the new value? Think of it kind of like a garden. And James Allen wrote this book called As a Man Thinketh. It's a very short little pamphlet, and it's all about the mind, because the mind is where so much of our power lives. I mean, Viktor Frankl said this. He was in the concentration camp in Germany and authored a book called A Man's Search for Meaning. And he says effectively, the one thing that the Nazis could not strip away was my ability to choose how I will encounter each circumstance. Y'all, choice is the biggest form of freedom. I'm just thinking at your sign, man. Freedom runs deep. We have to control our mind if we want to live free. And so we have to pull those mindsets into our awareness and then decide, do I want this to stay? So likening back to that garden example, if we're going to pull out a narrative, if we're going to pull out an old belief, we have to plant something new. Otherwise, the weeds are going to grow in, and potentially even the roots of the old narrative might come back up and take root. So really, I know this is a long way of saying it, but examining the past, how does that past show up and manifest in the present? And then identifying, who do I want to be? What's my potential? And then intentionally walking in that.
Yeah, life, business, everything. There's so much stuff that's out of our control, and the sooner you realize you can only control what you can control and focus in on that, especially running a construction company. I was at the International Builders Show speaking on this year.
Mm.
We have to control what we can control, but for some reason, we focus on all the stuff we can't. And we
Yes.
make that the reason for everything, and that's the opposite thinking process. Like, we have to just control what we can control, and then the other stuff's out of our control. We cross those bridges when we get to it. It's just what it is, and it's just a variable in business and life. And the problem is when you're not controlling what you can control, it really becomes a disaster, because now you have the controllables are out of control and the uncontrollables are doing what they do best, wreaking havoc.
Mm. Wow, that's so powerful. It's really, yeah, like we have this ability to control a lot. But if we're solely focused on this isolated area that we can't control, it's man, there my friend recommend so I know I don't mean to be throwing out these books. I know that it might get confusing. So I'll say concept between living in the gap or the gain. So my friend told me I really needed to read this book because I lived so much in the gap. And effectively what this is living in the gap means here I am today against where I want to go and look at all of that distance. Or I could turn around and say, oh, look where I am today, but look at where I started. Look at how far I've come. That's living in the game. And living in the game allows us to repeat what's working. It allows for us to continue to engage with our customers. You know, guys, if we're living in the gap, if we're constantly looking at everything that's missing, everything that's wrong, we're actually going to leave behind our customers that really are our greatest assets to our company. They are going to tell their friends about us if we spend time with them. If we're really celebrating our customers, celebrating our employees, celebrating our wins every single day, there's something about the dopamine hits that come that allow for us to continue the momentum that's being built, and then take dedicated time to be creative. And there's a big difference between just focusing on the problem and analyzing the problem rather than setting aside time in your schedule to be creative, because that's when a new solution comes. You know, it's the right brain and left brain. You know, you want to set aside time to, yes, analyze, look at the data, what's wrong here. But being creative allows for a new solution to come to us rather than just sitting in kind of the muck and mire of all the things that are wrong.
Mhm. I mean, we're getting into the nitty gritty here. This isn't just about marketing and branding. This is about life, like I say, you show up here, you don't know if you're gonna fix your business or if you're gonna fix your life. Like that's how we keep it here on Construction Champions. Like because we have to be right. One of the greatest realizations I've ever had was if I'm not right, if I'm not pouring into myself, my wife suffers, my son suffers, my business suffers because I'm not right to begin with. And it all starts with us.
Yes, it all starts with us. And y'all, that is what you just said. That is a construction champion. It that is assuming the radical responsibility to take onus of oneself. And then we can see clearly. There's a biblical text that says, remove the log out of your eye so that you can see clearly, to remove the little speck of sand in someone else's. And so we have the humility to go inward and really assess what are those, they call them limiting beliefs. What are those things that are limiting our ability to progress in our business? And yeah, y'all, I really, especially in this world of AI, a lot of construction companies and a lot of trades businesses are starting to have bots answer the phone and have automation set up. And in one sense, cool. Let's see how that works. But being able to invest in your employees so that they deliver such a wonderful human to human interaction when your customer calls, that is priceless. And so the more you're really able to see and lead with your values, we want our people to come first. We want to turn our businesses into we want to turn our customers into raving fans. Then you're going to operate in a very different way than we want scale, 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 like these private equity businesses do. So there's a very fundamental difference in operating your business, but you have to know what you want in terms of the future. How do I want to exit? Do I want this to stay in the family? Do I want to sell it? Do I want to bring on a partner? And also, what are my values? Because the operations are going to be led directly as a ramification of who you are.
Awesome. I love it. This has been a fantastic conversation today. For everybody listening, if they wanted to connect with you, follow you, learn more about what you do, where's the best places for them to do that?
I'm on most every social media channel, Christene Marie, but also my website, christenemarie.com.
Awesome. Well, Christene, thank you for taking the time and being on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for what you're building. These are really important conversations. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Absolutely. And it doesn't happen without amazing guests like you. So, Construction Champions, another episode in the bag. And I want to challenge you to do what Christene talked about at the beginning of the episode. Write your eulogy. There, I even pronounced that right. That probably just blew everybody's mind. That's a consistent listener that I got that out without error. What would people say? What do you want people to say? What does it look like? Because the great thing is like she said, we can rewrite it. The future's still here. We still have time. We don't know how much time we have, but the only way you start to course correct and get you going in the right direction is to take the actions necessary, to look in the mirror, to have these conversations, to understand that your value is there. You bring it through your company and don't let that shadow you. I'll be real open and honest here. So we're anybody that's around knows we are in a complete rebuild right now from a software perspective. Part of that is going to be the brand and how we look. The brand's going to stay the same, but how we talk and how we act is going to be completely different because what I have found is we're in this vacuum like every other software company, and that's not who Ron is. It actually makes me uncomfortable to have to be in that because that's not how we operate at Builder Comms, and our branding and how we talk doesn't reflect that. So we're changing all of that, and we're going to lean into who we actually are, and we're a bootstrap company. We never take venture money. We just grind this out. I'm a guy from the industry. We don't care. About all this stuff that is the typical framework for what a SaaS company has to be. We're just going to blow it out the water. And we're just going to give our customers what they want on our website, everywhere. We're just going to give them the information they want and not care about some hero section that people don't even care about. that is what you have to do with your business. Like it didn't just easily happen for me to make this decision because everybody would tell you you're wrong. Because everybody around you is doing the complete different. They're following the framework. This is the framework for success. This is how you do it. If you're going to build a software company, you have to do it this way. And I say no. I say that that's not the truth, and it doesn't have to be the truth for you either with how you build your business. I know who I am, and we're going to let that portray through the brand because the brand is that. It's why it exists to today. So why fall in line with everybody else? Why not just really highlight who we are as a company? So Construction Champions, until next time, be the champion you're meant to be.